story of life.
The Journey of Self-Forgiveness, the story of Aiden. Aiden was born and raised in a quiet, picturesque town, surrounded by forests and rivers. From a young age, he was known for his kindness, a warmth that endeared him to many. As he grew, Aiden developed dreams of making a difference in the world. His parents often told him he was meant for something great, and he carried their words in his heart. But life has a way of challenging even the most hopeful souls. In his early 20s, Aiden got a job in a large city far from home, working with a prominent company that demanded every ounce of his time and energy. The promise of a bright career kept him motivated, but the corporate world was a harsh place, and the weight of constant expectations began to wear on him. Slowly, he found himself making choices he once would have avoided, cutting corners to meet deadlines, taking credit for others' work, and even bending his own principles in the pursuit of success. The hardest blow came when he was assigned to lead a project with enormous stakes. His team worked tirelessly under his guidance, but near the end, he realized a crucial part of the project was flawed. He knew that if he reported the issue, it would cost the company a fortune and likely end his budding career. Aiden chose to ignore the problem, hoping it would go unnoticed. When the flaw was exposed, it was disastrous. His team lost their jobs, and Aiden's reputation was damaged beyond repair. Haunted by guilt, Aiden left the city and returned to his hometown. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he had betrayed not only others, but also himself. He stopped seeing friends, avoided his family, and became a shadow of the person he once was. His world, once full of color and purpose, seemed reduced to shades of regret and shame. Every day, he asked himself the same question: how could I have let this happen? For months, Aiden was lost in a fog of self-blame. But one winter afternoon, during a walk through the snowy woods, he encountered an elderly man fishing by a frozen river. They exchanged a few words, and the man, sensing Aiden's burden, invited him to sit. The two sat in silence, the crisp air filling the space between them, until the man finally spoke. Sometimes, he began, we carry our past mistakes like stones in a bag. We tell ourselves they'll keep us from repeating them, but over time, the weight breaks us down. Aiden felt his throat tighten, as though the man had read his soul. How do I let go? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. The old man smiled. You don't need to let go all at once. Each day, you take out one stone, look at it, forgive yourself for it, and let it fall. Forgiveness is like the river beneath the ice. It may not be visible, but it's there, waiting to flow again. Inspired by this conversation, Aiden decided to start his own journey of self-forgiveness. He began by reflecting on his actions, admitting his faults not just to himself, but also to those he had wronged. He reached out to former colleagues and apologized, offering genuine remorse and accepting their responses, both forgiving and hurtful, with grace. Each apology felt like a weight lifting, but the journey wasn't easy. Some days, the pain felt as raw as ever, and forgiveness seemed like a distant shore. As the seasons passed, Aiden tried to live with a new set of values. He began volunteering at a local school, teaching children about the importance of integrity and kindness, hoping they would learn from his mistakes. One of the students, a shy girl named Lily, reminded him of his younger self. Her curiosity and honesty rekindled in him a sense of hope, a belief in the goodness he thought he had lost. One evening, while helping Lily with a project, she shared a story of her own mistake and her fear of letting others down. Aiden listened intently and, for the first time, found himself giving advice that felt as if it were meant for him. 2. We're all works in progress. Mistakes are how we learn. What matters is how we make amends and what we do next. In that moment, He felt a warmth spread through his heart, a release of the guilt he had held so tightly. Aiden realized that the journey of self-forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it into who he was becoming. He learned to forgive himself, not by forgetting his mistakes, but by allowing them to shape a kinder, humbler, and more resilient version of himself. Years later, Aiden had rebuilt his life, not as a high-powered executive, but as a mentor in his community. He still carried memories of his mistakes, but now they were like scars, reminders of his journey, not weights dragging him down. He learned that forgiveness was less about a single moment of release and more about a commitment to live a better life each day. And every winter, when the river froze over, he would walk to the same spot where he'd met the old man. He would sit by the frozen water, feel the quietness of the world around him, and remember that beneath the surface, the river of forgiveness always flows.
The journey of self-forgiveness. Lynn had always been a perfectionist. In school, she was known for her discipline and her ability to meet any goal she set. Her family often praised her achievements, but deep down, Lynn felt an intense pressure to live up to everyone's expectations. With every accomplishment, she felt the stakes rise, and with every little misstep, she couldn't help but be overly harsh with herself. She feared that any mistake would reveal a side of her that wasn't perfect, a side she felt no one would accept. As she entered adulthood, Lynn's life took a difficult turn. She made a decision in a moment of panic, one that hurt someone she loved dearly. She had only wanted to avoid disappointing them, but her actions ended up causing even more pain. The guilt hit her like a wave, pulling her under with a weight she felt unable to escape. Days turned into weeks, and still, Lynn couldn't stop replaying the moment in her mind, wishing she could go back and make a different choice. The hurt in her loved one's eyes stayed with her, lingering like a shadow. Lynn tried apologizing and hoped it would bring relief, but her guilt lingered. It seeped into every part of her life, isolating her from friends and family. She found herself pulling away, feeling unworthy of their love and support. She stopped going to social gatherings, avoided conversations, and threw herself into work as a distraction. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was no longer the person she once was. One day, Lynn's closest friend, Mai, invited her out for a coffee. They had once been inseparable, sharing their thoughts, dreams, and fears. But Lynn's silence had created a gap she feared might never close. She hesitated but decided to go, feeling a small part of her longing for connection. As they sat down, Mai looked at Lynn, her expression filled with warmth and concern. "Lynn, I can see that something is eating away at you," she said gently. "I don't know what happened, but I want you to know that I'm here for you no matter what." At that moment, Lynn felt a rush of emotion that she had been holding back for so long. Her eyes filled with tears, and she finally let herself share her story. She expected judgment, maybe even disappointment, but Mai only listened, nodding and holding Lynn's hand. When she finished, Mai's response was simple but profound. "Lynn, you're human. You made a mistake, but that doesn't make you unworthy of forgiveness, especially your own." Mai's words struck Lynn deeply. She hadn't realized how much she had been punishing herself, refusing to believe she deserved peace. That night, Lynn sat alone in her room, replaying Mai's words. She decided to start a journal, writing out every thought, every feeling, and every fear she had about her mistake. It wasn't easy. Some nights, she struggled to write anything at all. But slowly, the words started to flow, releasing emotions she hadn't been able to speak out loud. One evening, as Lynn sat with her journal, she looked at the person she had been when she made that mistake. A version of herself that was scared, vulnerable, and imperfect. She closed her eyes and placed her hand on her heart. "I forgive you," she whispered softly. She repeated the words over and over, feeling a sense of release each time. Forgiveness didn't come overnight. It was a journey, and there were days when the guilt would creep back, threatening to pull her under. But each time, Lynn reminded herself that healing was a process, and each step she took was bringing her closer to peace. She realized that forgiving herself didn't mean forgetting her mistake. It meant accepting that she was human, capable of both hurt and healing, failure and growth. Months later, Lynn found herself reconnecting with friends, including the one she had hurt. Their relationship wasn't what it had been before, but they had found a new understanding, a gentler way of being in each other's lives. And in that, Lynn found a new sense of wholeness, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is always a path forward, if we're willing to take it. Lynn learned that self-forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past, but learning to carry it with grace. In letting go, she found herself again, more whole and more at peace than she had ever thought possible.
You're listening to Stories of Life on the M. Bryan channel. This series is crafted to bring you comfort and tranquility, perfect for winding down at the end of the day. Each story is a gentle escape, guiding you through moments that soothe the mind and ease you into a peaceful sleep.
The weight of letting go. For as long as he could remember, Kwang had been a rock for his family. Growing up in a small town, his parents had always relied on him, and he gladly took on the responsibility. He was the eldest, and every decision he made felt like it bore the weight of his family's future. Kwang prided himself on his careful, thoughtful approach to life, believing that if he planned well enough, he could protect everyone he loved from hardship. For as long as he could remember, Kwang had been a rock for his family. Growing up in a small town, his parents had always relied on him, and he gladly took on the responsibility. He was the eldest, and every decision he made felt like it bore the weight of his family's future. Kwang prided himself on his careful, thoughtful approach to life, believing that if he planned well enough, he could protect everyone he loved from hardship. Then, one day, life threw him a curveball he hadn't anticipated. In a rush to secure a better financial future for his family, Kwang made an investment that seemed like a sure thing. It was a business deal with an old friend, someone he trusted deeply. He had spent months weighing the risks and finally decided it was the right move. But when the business failed, he lost more than money. He lost his confidence, his sense of security, and a friendship he thought would last a lifetime. The loss felt overwhelming. Kwang couldn't shake the feeling that he'd failed, not just himself, but everyone he cared about. His parents, once so proud, now looked at him with a quiet sadness he couldn't bear. They never said anything harsh, but their silence was enough to break his heart. The weight of it all sank him into a state of isolation, convincing him that he didn't deserve the love or respect he once had. Every day, he went through the motions of his life, but he was haunted by the memories of what he'd lost and the fear that he had let down those who depended on him. He spent hours replaying each decision, wondering where he had gone wrong, punishing himself for not seeing the signs. Months passed, and the guilt only grew heavier. One evening, Kwang decided to escape to a place he hadn't been in years, a small mountain near his hometown, where he used to hike as a teenager. He remembered the peace he'd once felt there, a quiet space untouched by the burdens of adulthood. As he reached the peak, he stood in silence, staring at the vast landscape below. For the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to breathe deeply. As he sat on a rock, he felt a wave of emotions wash over him. He thought about his life, his family, his lost friend, and the choices he had made. And then, almost instinctively, he spoke out loud to the empty air, confessing his regrets, his guilt, and his sorrow. "I'm sorry," he whispered to himself, feeling the words echo in the stillness around him. In that moment, he realized something profound. He'd spent so much time punishing himself, believing that he deserved every ounce of pain he felt, that he had forgotten something essential. Mistakes didn't define him. They were just moments in his journey. Sitting there, in the calm of the mountains, he felt a sense of acceptance start to take root. He was human, bound to falter and rise, just like everyone else. Kwong made his way down the mountain that evening with a lighter heart. He wasn't fully healed. He knew there would still be hard days ahead, but he felt a small spark of hope, a sense that he could move forward, one step at a time. He forgave himself for trusting a friend, for dreaming of a better life, and for the courage it took to try. And in forgiving himself, he found a new beginning. When he returned home, Kwong felt ready to rebuild. He knew it would take time to regain his family's trust, to show them that he was still the person they loved. But with each step, he reminded himself that forgiveness was a journey, and he had finally taken his first step. The Garden of Second Chances. Ho had always taken pride in her career. Working as a nurse, she was the kind of person who lived to help others, to be the steady presence in moments of pain and worry. But one winter night, everything changed. An exhausted Ho, after a double shift, made a small mistake, one that didn't seem major at first. However, in the days that followed, it led to complications for a patient. Though the patient recovered, Ho couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility, the haunting worry that if she had been more vigilant, things could have been different. Despite reassurances from her colleagues and the patient's family, Ho couldn't forgive herself. She replayed every detail of that night, searching for the moment she went wrong. She stopped going out with friends, avoided family gatherings, and eventually left her job. The weight of her guilt became a silent but constant companion, pulling her deeper into isolation. Months passed, but the guilt lingered, even growing stronger. One evening, Ho's mother called, asking her to come stay at their countryside home for a while. Ho hesitated, but eventually agreed, knowing that maybe a change of scenery would help, or at least give her time to clear her mind. When Ho arrived, the familiar sights and smells of her childhood home brought a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in months. Her mother, a patient and wise woman, didn't press her for answers, giving her space to settle in. But one day, as they were drinking tea, her mother gently suggested, "Why don't you help me with the garden tomorrow? It could be good for you." The next morning, Ho found herself kneeling in her mother's garden, hands deep in soil as she pulled out weeds, trimmed dead leaves, and gently planted seeds. It was hard work, and she wasn't used to it, but there was something soothing in the simplicity of each task. She could focus on the earth, the smell of fresh soil, the feel of each plant's leaves in her hands. Her mother worked alongside her, sometimes chatting about the seasons, other times simply humming softly. As the days turned into weeks, Ho found herself drawn to the garden. She felt an unspoken understanding in watching the plants, each struggling yet resilient, finding their way to grow and bloom despite rough conditions. She found comfort in tending to their needs, watering them, and waiting patiently for them to respond. One day, as she was planting a new row of seedlings, her mother came and sat beside her. After a long silence, her mother spoke. "The garden doesn't expect perfection, you know. Sometimes a plant struggles. Sometimes it doesn't make it. We just do our best to give it what it needs and hope it'll thrive. But even if it doesn't, it's part of nature, part of the journey. We let it go and start again." Ho listened, her hands still in the soil, feeling the weight of her mother's words sink in. She realized that she had been holding on to her mistake like a burden she couldn't lay down, afraid to let herself move forward. Just like the plants, she had her seasons, her struggles, and her moments of thriving. She had done her best, and yet, like any gardener, there were things she couldn't control. The next day, Ho walked through the garden alone, letting herself absorb the beauty around her. She found herself kneeling before one small rose bush that had struggled all summer, barely producing any blooms. Yet there it stood, resilient and alive, waiting for its time to thrive. In that moment, Ho felt a shift within her, a softening of the tightness she'd been holding onto for so long. She placed her hand gently on the rose bush and whispered, "It's okay, you did your best." And with those words, she felt a release, a letting go of the burden she'd carried. Returning to the city weeks later, Ho felt lighter, more at peace. She started volunteering at a small clinic, working slowly but surely back into her field, carrying with her the lessons she'd learned in the garden. The patient who had recovered from her mistake never left her mind, but now she held the memory with gentleness, understanding that forgiveness wasn't about erasing mistakes, but about accepting them as part of her journey. Ho would return to her mother's garden each season, tending to it, nurturing it, and letting it remind her of the resilience in each of us. And with every visit, she would walk past that struggling rose bush, a living testament to second chances, a reminder that even in our brokenness, we're worthy of grace and forgiveness.
You're listening to Stories of Life on the M. Bryan channel. This series is crafted to bring you comfort and tranquility, perfect for winding down at the end of the day. Each story is a gentle escape, guiding you through moments that soothe the mind and ease you into a peaceful sleep.
When the river stopped, Thao had always believed that success meant constant movement. Her entire life had been a whirlwind of deadlines, achievements, and goals, each reached with the expectation that it would bring her some lasting sense of fulfillment. She had climbed the corporate ladder with incredible speed, driven by her ambition to provide a better life for her family. Her parents had worked so hard for her to reach this point, and she wanted to make them proud, to show them that their sacrifices had meant something. But as the years went on, her achievements began to feel empty. Each promotion felt less like a celebration and more like another weight to carry. Thao's friends often reminded her of her dream life, her ability to travel, her independence, her impressive career. Yet, despite it all, she felt tired, a kind of weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. It was a quiet, persistent ache in her spirit, a longing she didn't quite understand. One late evening, after yet another exhausting day, Thao's phone rang. It was her grandmother. The soft, familiar voice on the other end instantly eased some of the tension she'd been holding. Her grandmother, sensing the exhaustion in her voice, asked, "When will you come and visit us, my dear?" Thao paused. She hadn't returned to her hometown in nearly 2 years. Between work deadlines and social commitments, she'd always found some reason to put it off. But hearing the gentle plea in her grandmother's voice, she felt something inside her shift. She agreed, promising to visit the following weekend. When she arrived, the air felt different. The simplicity of the town, the warm smiles of familiar faces. It was as if she'd stepped back into a part of herself she'd long forgotten. Her grandmother greeted her with a quiet joy, pulling her into a long hug that seemed to hold years of unspoken words. Thao felt her chest tighten, realizing just how much she'd missed this closeness. That night, after dinner, her grandmother suggested a walk by the river. They strolled slowly, the river glistening in the moonlight beside them. After a while, they sat on a bench by the bank. The gentle rush of water created a soothing backdrop as her grandmother spoke. "Do you know, Tao?" her grandmother began. "This river has been here longer than I've been alive. It flows slowly, sometimes almost to a stop. But it never rushes. It takes its time. Even when it's still, it knows it's still moving." Her grandmother's words hung in the air, and Tao felt something crack open within her. She realized that she had lived her life like a river rushing through rapids, constantly trying to reach the next destination, to be faster, better, more accomplished. She had rarely allowed herself to rest, to be still, to acknowledge the weight she carried. The next morning, Tao joined her grandmother in her daily routines. Together, they worked in the small garden, watering the plants, pulling weeds, and savoring the sunlight on their backs. They spent quiet hours in the kitchen, preparing simple meals, each task a small act of mindfulness. Her grandmother moved with a calm deliberation, her hands steady and her mind focused on the present moment. Thao noticed how her grandmother gave each moment her full attention, as if each action were a meditation. Over the next few days, Thao began to feel a subtle but profound shift within herself. She started waking up early, taking walks by the river, and sitting with her thoughts rather than pushing them aside. The worries that usually crowded her mind began to soften, replaced by a gentle acceptance that she didn't have to constantly strive to be worthy of rest. In these quiet moments, she realized how much of her life she had spent trying to prove her worth to herself, to her family, to the world. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains, her grandmother turned to her, a knowing look in her eyes. "Thao, remember this," she said softly. "You don't have to run to be loved. Just like this river, you can move slowly, rest along the way, and still reach where you need to be. Life isn't about rushing. It's about finding your rhythm." Thao felt tears well up in her eyes. She had been waiting her whole life for someone to give her permission to rest, to tell her that her worth wasn't tied to her achievements or her busyness. And in that moment, with her grandmother's gentle words and the quiet beauty of her surroundings, she gave herself that permission. The next day, Tao packed her bags to return to the city. But this time, she left with a lighter heart and a new resolve. She promised herself that she would no longer measure her days by what she accomplished, but by the peace she felt within. She vowed to let herself move more slowly, to take time to pause, to breathe, and to be grateful. Back in the city, Tao returned to her work with a newfound clarity. She set boundaries, learning to say no when she needed to, and made time each day to sit quietly, allowing her mind and spirit the rest they deserved. She returned to the river in her heart, remembering her grandmother's wisdom, knowing that she didn't have to prove anything to be worthy of rest. Over time, her life took on a gentler rhythm. She still had ambitions, still worked hard, but now, she also made room for stillness, for moments of peace that nourished her soul. And in embracing rest, she found a new kind of strength, a quiet resilience that would guide her through the seasons of her life, reminding her always to flow like the river, steadily, patiently, with grace.
You're listening to Stories of Life on the M. Brian channel. This series is crafted to bring you comfort and tranquility, perfect for winding down at the end of the day. Each story is a gentle escape, guiding you through moments that soothe the mind and ease you into a peaceful sleep.
The weight of letting go. Min was always the one who took care of everyone else. As the eldest sibling in a large family, he had grown up quickly, taking on responsibilities beyond his years. He was the one his siblings turned to when they needed advice, the one his friends leaned on during tough times. Min took pride in being dependable, in knowing he was someone others could count on. But with every promise kept and every hand held, Min's own heart grew heavier. He'd made mistakes along the way, choices he regretted deeply. He was haunted by one, in particular. His decision to leave home for a better job in the city. When his father fell ill, Min was away, working long hours, unable to return quickly. By the time he did, his father's health had worsened, and he passed away not long after Min returned. Despite everyone's assurances that it wasn't his fault, Min carried the guilt like a stone around his neck, convinced he'd let his father down. Months turned into years, and though life continued, Min could not shake the feeling that he had failed his family when they needed him most. He filled his days with work, helping others, and trying to be the best son, brother, and friend he could be. But the guilt lingered, a constant reminder of what he believed to be his greatest mistake. One day, his younger sister Lan invited him to go on a hike to a mountain near their hometown. Min hesitated, but Lan insisted, sensing that he needed a change. Reluctantly, he agreed. They packed their bags and drove to the mountain, the same one their father had taken them to as children, telling stories as they walked the trails. As they climbed, Lan spoke about their father, sharing memories and laughter, each story bringing a sense of warmth and connection. Min, however, grew quieter, feeling his guilt weigh even heavier in this place full of memories. At the peak, they found a quiet spot overlooking the valley, the landscape stretching out beneath them, endless and calm. Lan handed Min a small, smooth stone she had picked up along the trail. "Hold on to this," she said, "and think about the guilt you carry." Min looked at her, puzzled, but followed her instruction. He closed his eyes, feeling the coolness of the stone in his hand, letting his mind drift to that painful memory. He saw his father's face, felt the weight of his absence during his father's illness, the regret that had haunted him for so long. After a few moments, Lan spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. "Now imagine our father here with us. Imagine what he would say to you if he saw you carrying this burden." Min's eyes filled with tears as he remembered his father's kindness, his forgiving nature. In his heart, he could almost hear his father's voice, reassuring him, telling him he'd done his best, that he was loved and forgiven. Lan continued, "Now let it go. Leave that stone here, with the weight of everything you've been carrying. You don't need to carry it any longer." With a shaky breath, Min opened his hand, placing the stone on the ground. He felt the weight of his guilt begin to lift, slowly but surely, as he let himself believe that he deserved forgiveness, that he could release the burden he'd held onto for so long. As they descended the mountain, Min felt lighter, as though he'd left a piece of himself behind, a part he no longer needed. For the first time, he felt a sense of peace, a quiet acceptance that, while he could not change the past, he could forgive himself for it. In the days that followed, Min noticed a change within himself. The memories of his father no longer carried the sting of regret, but instead brought a bittersweet joy. He honored his father's memory not by carrying guilt, but by being present for his family, loving them fully, and forgiving himself for the moments he couldn't be there. Through self-forgiveness, Min found a new strength and freedom, embracing each day with a lighter heart, knowing that he too deserved grace and kindness.
The Lantern Maker's Secret. In a quiet village nestled between green hills and a vast lake, there lived an old lantern maker named Hero. For as long as anyone could remember, Hero made the most exquisite lanterns, each one unique, crafted with patterns that glowed in the night like stars. People from all over came to buy his lanterns, hoping they might bring a bit of Hero's magic into their lives. But Hero had a secret, one that few knew. As a young man, he had been quick-tempered and restless, often consumed by jealousy and frustration. In his 20s, he'd been gifted an apprenticeship under one of the country's finest artisans. Eager to prove himself, he poured all his energy into his craft, but no matter how hard he worked, he felt his efforts went unrecognized. His teacher praised others, but rarely Hero, and this fueled his resentment. Eventually, he left the apprenticeship in a fit of anger, vowing he'd become successful on his own. Years passed, and while Hero gained skills and fame, his heart grew heavy with bitterness. He felt haunted by regret for leaving his apprenticeship and resentment toward those who had received the teacher's approval. He couldn't sleep at night, and his dreams were filled with shadows that seemed to remind him of his unfulfilled potential. He would stay up, trying to create lanterns that would outshine his teachers, but nothing brought him peace. One moonless night, as he worked alone by candlelight, a traveler knocked on his door. The man, weary from his journey, asked Hero for a lantern to guide his way through the mountains. Hero handed him one of his simplest designs, apologizing for its plainness. The traveler held the lantern up to the light and smiled. "This is beautiful," he said, "You have a true gift." Hiro shook his head. "This one is flawed. I keep it for myself because it's not worthy of being sold." The traveler laughed softly. "You see flaws where I see beauty. It is the light within that makes a lantern shine, not its outer perfection." The words struck Hiro deeply, but he did not respond. Instead, he watched the traveler disappear into the night with the lantern, its light casting soft shadows on the path. That night, Hiro couldn't stop thinking about what the traveler had said. He realized that he had spent his life trying to perfect the outside of each lantern, hoping that its beauty would silence his inner turmoil. Yet, he'd never considered the inner light, the intention and purpose behind his craft. The next morning, Hiro did something he had never done before. He sat by his workbench, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath, letting go of the need to compete, to prove himself, or to be better than anyone else. He picked up his tools and began to create, not with the intent of perfection, but with a desire to bring warmth and light into the world. From that day on, Hiro's lanterns changed. They were still beautiful, but they now held a gentleness, a peace that people could feel. Those who bought his lanterns said they brought comfort and calm, and soon his fame spread even further. Hiro, however, found that he no longer cared about fame. For the first time, he felt content, no longer haunted by the shadows of his past. Years later, a young apprentice came to Hiro, eager to learn from the master. Hiro taught him everything he knew, but his most valuable lesson was one he saved for last. "Remember," he said one evening, as they finished a batch of lanterns, "the light that shines brightest isn't always the one that's perfect on the outside. What matters is the intention you pour into each lantern. When you create, let go of bitterness, of envy, of anger. The lanterns will carry whatever light you put into them." Hiro passed away many years later, leaving behind a legacy not only of beautiful lanterns, but of a life well lived. A life that found peace through acceptance and the quiet glow of self-forgiveness. And his apprentice, now a renowned lantern maker himself, passed on Hiro's secret to his own students, ensuring that the old man's wisdom would continue to light the world, one lantern at a time.
You're listening to Stories of Life on the M. Bryan channel. This series is crafted to bring you comfort and tranquility, perfect for winding down at the end of the day. Each story is a gentle escape, guiding you through moments that soothe the mind and ease you into a peaceful sleep.
The Path of Redemption, the story of Eleanor Gray. Eleanor Gray had always been a spirited girl. Growing up in a small coastal village, she dreamt of adventure and fame, much to her family's dismay. Her father, a humble fisherman, and her mother, a baker, hoped she would be content with the simple life they had. But Eleanor, full of ambition, had bigger plans. At 18, Eleanor left home to make her mark on the world. She found her way to a bustling city, where she worked as a stage actress. Her talent and charm quickly earned her attention, and soon, Eleanor became the star of the theater, adored by the crowds and pursued by influential patrons. She wrote letters home filled with promises of success and plans to return a star. But with time, her letters grew fewer, and her visits home were non-existent. Years passed, and Eleanor's ambitions burned brighter. Her fame grew, but so did her distance from her family. In her heart, she missed them deeply, yet she chose to ignore the ache, telling herself there would be time to reconnect later. She was confident, unshakable, until tragedy struck. One winter evening, Eleanor received a letter that shattered her world. Her mother had passed away suddenly, and her father's health was quickly failing. Shocked and consumed by regret, Eleanor rushed back to her village. But it was too late. Her father passed away days after she returned. In her grief, Eleanor walked through the empty rooms of her childhood home, finding the letters she had sent, each one kept neatly in a box by her parents. But among them were letters she had never received. Letters her parents had sent to her, describing their joy at her success, their longing to see her, and eventually their sadness over her silence. Eleanor was haunted by guilt, unable to forgive herself for prioritizing her dreams over her family. She felt she had betrayed her parents' love. She stayed in the village, abandoning her career, and tried to live a quiet life. But the weight of her guilt followed her, a constant reminder of the promises she'd broken. For years, Eleanor isolated herself, too ashamed to rekindle her old friendships or return to the theater. She avoided the places she had once loved and spent her days in a haze of regret. She tended to her family's old house, mended nets left by her father, and helped around the village. But each act of service felt hollow, as if no amount of kindness could atone for her past neglect. Eleanor's loneliness deepened. She would sit by the shore at night, listening to the waves and imagining conversations she would never have with her parents. She avoided mirrors, feeling that her face was now marked with the mistakes of her youth. The vibrant, ambitious woman she once was seemed lost forever, replaced by someone who saw herself only through the eyes of her regret. One autumn day, an elderly traveler arrived in the village. His name was Samuel, a storyteller known for his wisdom and kindness. He had heard of Eleanor's story and was intrigued by the woman who had once been a star, but now lived as a recluse. He approached her one evening, sensing her need for someone to listen. They sat in silence for a while before Samuel began to speak of his own journey, sharing his stories of adventure, failure, and redemption. He spoke of his own mistakes, the relationships he'd damaged, and the years he'd spent trying to forgive himself. Eleanor, reluctant at first, found herself confiding in Samuel, sharing the burden of her guilt. Samuel listened, nodding, then said softly, "The journey of forgiveness isn't about changing the past. It's about learning to live with it." Eleanor felt the truth in his words, but struggled to embrace it. How could she forgive herself for something so deeply rooted in her heart? Samuel suggested that Eleanor create something in her parents' memory, something that would bring life and light into the village. Inspired, Eleanor decided to turn her family's old garden into a space filled with beauty, a place where people could remember their loved ones. She worked tirelessly, planting flowers, adding benches, and decorating the garden with small, handwritten plaques where people could write messages to those they'd lost. As she worked, she found herself talking to her parents, telling them of her regrets, her love, and her hope to make amends. With each plant she placed in the soil, Eleanor felt a small part of her burden lift. She found solace in the act of creation, realizing that honoring her parents' memory could help her make peace with her past. A year later, the garden had become a cherished place in the village. To celebrate, Eleanor organized a small festival, inviting the villagers to bring lanterns and place them around the garden at dusk. The Festival of Lights, as it came to be known, became an annual event where people gathered to remember those they loved and share stories of forgiveness and healing. As she watched the flickering lanterns light up the garden, Eleanor felt a shift within her, a warmth and acceptance she hadn't felt in years. She realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant embracing the person she had become through her mistakes and choosing to live with compassion and kindness in their memory. Encouraged by the villagers and by Samuel's gentle reminders, Eleanor felt ready to return to the theater. She knew that she could use her gift not only to entertain, but to inspire, sharing stories that resonated with forgiveness, resilience, and hope. Her first performance back on stage was different. She wasn't seeking applause or approval, but simply sharing a story close to her heart. After the performance, she dedicated her success to her parents, feeling as though they were with her, proud and forgiving. The applause filled her heart, but it was the quiet peace she felt that stayed with her long after the crowd had dispersed. Years later, Eleanor had become a beloved figure in her community, known not only for her performances, but for her garden, her kindness, and the wisdom she shared with others. She continued the Festival of Lights each year, welcoming those seeking forgiveness and reminding them that redemption is a path taken one step at a time. One evening, a young actress came to Eleanor, seeking advice. She shared her dreams, her fears, and her worry that she would one day make mistakes that she couldn't undo. Eleanor placed a gentle hand on the young woman's shoulder and said, "You will make mistakes. We all do. But remember this, no matter how far you wander from the path, there is always a way back." Eleanor had learned that forgiveness was a journey, a lifelong one, and in forgiving herself, she had found not only peace but purpose, transforming her pain into a legacy of light and love that would continue long after she was gone. Eleanor lived out her days surrounded by friends, laughter, and gratitude. The Festival of Lights remained her enduring gift to the village, a reminder that no one is ever beyond redemption. And in the hearts of those who knew her, Eleanor's journey stood as a testament to the power of self-forgiveness, a journey that, once begun, can bring peace to even the most restless soul.
You're listening to Stories of Life on the M. Brian channel. This series is crafted to bring you comfort and tranquility, perfect for winding down at the end of the day. Each story is a gentle escape, guiding you through moments that soothe the mind and ease you into a peaceful sleep.
The River of Shadows, the story of Olivia Rivers. Olivia Rivers grew up in a small, serene town by the coast, where everyone knew each other, and secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. Her life seemed perfect from the outside. She had a loving family, close friends, and she excelled academically. But Olivia's ambitions went beyond the town. She dreamed of living in the city, finding success, and escaping the limits of her small world. When she turned 19, Olivia left home with a scholarship to a prestigious university. The day she left, her younger sister Emily handed her a pendant with a small blue stone, one Emily had saved up for months to buy. Olivia promised to wear it every day, a reminder of her family's love.
The River of Shadows, the story of Olivia Rivers. Olivia Rivers grew up in a small, serene town by the coast, where everyone knew each other, and secrets rarely stayed hidden for long. Her life seemed perfect from the outside. She had a loving family, close friends, and she excelled academically. But Olivia's ambitions went beyond the town. She dreamed of living in the city, finding success, and escaping the limits of her small world. When she turned 19, Olivia left home with a scholarship to a prestigious university. The day she left, her younger sister, Emily, handed her a pendant with a small blue stone, one Emily had saved up for months to buy. Olivia promised to wear it every day, a reminder of her family's love. But as she got caught up in the fast-paced life of the city, Olivia distanced herself from her family, putting her career and social life above all else. Months passed, and her calls home became less frequent. Her sister's emails often went unanswered, until one day when tragedy struck. Her mother called to say that Emily had fallen seriously ill and was in the hospital. Olivia, consumed by a deadline, assured her mother she would visit soon, though her heart knew it was an empty promise. Days turned into weeks, and by the time Olivia finally returned home, Emily had passed away. Her family was shattered, and Olivia felt herself drowning in grief and guilt. She had broken her promise to the one person who had loved her unconditionally, and no amount of success could mend the emptiness inside her. From that day, she carried a sense of loss and self-blame that she couldn't escape. Olivia, unable to face the memories of her past, left her family and returned to the city, burying herself in her work. She isolated herself, pushing away friends and declining invitations. She filled her days with endless tasks, hoping to silence the voice in her head that reminded her of her failure. But guilt gnawed at her, becoming a shadow that followed her everywhere.
Her once passionate ambition dulled, and she began to feel disconnected from her own life. She felt unworthy of joy, of friendship, and even of success. She thought that the only way to atone was to live in solitude, punishing herself by denying anything that once brought her happiness. Years passed, and Olivia's isolation became her new reality. She drifted through life, a shell of her former self, until a chance encounter began to stir something long forgotten within her. One rainy evening, while wandering aimlessly through the city, Olivia found herself in a small, quiet bookstore. She absent-mindedly flipped through a book on forgiveness, its pages worn with age. A quote caught her eye. To forgive oneself is not to forget the pain caused, but to embrace the growth it can inspire. As she pondered these words, an older woman approached her and introduced herself as Mira. She was the owner of the bookstore and had noticed Olivia's sadness. Gently, Mira asked her to share her story, sensing that Olivia carried a heavy burden. At first, Olivia was hesitant, but something about Mira's kind presence made her open up. She confessed her guilt over Emily's death, her inability to forgive herself, and how she had been living a life of self-imposed exile. Mira listened without judgment, nodding as Olivia spoke. Finally, Mira told her, "Guilt is a powerful teacher, but it's not meant to be a life sentence. Sometimes, forgiveness is not about forgetting what we did, but learning to accept the person we are now because of it." Mira's words lingered with Olivia, igniting a faint glimmer of hope. She realized that she wanted to forgive herself, though she had no idea how to begin.
Mira suggested that Olivia take small steps towards self-forgiveness by finding a way to honor Emily's memory. She encouraged Olivia to volunteer at a local youth center, where young girls, often from troubled backgrounds, came to learn, grow, and find comfort. Reluctantly, Olivia agreed. At first, she found it difficult to connect with the girls. She feared they would see through her, sensing her unworthiness. But over time, she discovered that helping them brought her a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She began to share her story with some of the girls, hoping it would help them feel less alone in their own struggles. Through these connections, Olivia began to understand that Emily's memory could live on not in regret, but in kindness and healing. Each day spent at the center brought her a step closer to forgiving herself. As her work at the youth center continued, Olivia felt an urge to reach out to her family, though she feared their judgment and anger. She wrote letters, expressing her sorrow, but never sent them. Eventually, she decided to visit home, knowing that part of her journey required facing the people she had left behind. Her parents welcomed her with open arms, and though the loss of Emily still weighed heavily on them all, they were grateful to have Olivia back. Together, they shared stories about Emily, remembering her laughter, her kindness, and her dreams. Olivia felt a bittersweet blend of sadness and relief, realizing that while her parents had grieved, they had never condemned her. In time, she found a way to forgive herself, knowing that Emily's love had always been unconditional. One day, while helping her mother sort through old belongings, Olivia found the blue pendant her sister had given her. She held it in her hands, feeling the weight of her sister's love and trust. With tears streaming down her face, she vowed to live her life in a way that would make Emily proud. From that day forward, Olivia wore the pendant as a reminder of the promises she would keep, not just to her family, but to herself. She promised to live with kindness, to connect with others, and to use her life to bring joy where she could. Years later, Olivia started a foundation in Emily's memory, dedicated to supporting young women in need, helping them find the courage to pursue their dreams. She shared her story with those who joined the program, offering hope to those struggling with their own past mistakes. Through her work, Olivia realized that her journey of self-forgiveness had not erased her guilt, but it had transformed it into compassion, a force that drove her to help others rather than remain trapped in regret. Her life became a testament to Emily's legacy, a way to honor the love she had once taken for granted. And each time she saw a young girl find hope through the foundation, Olivia felt a sense of peace, knowing that her journey had brought her not only healing, but a renewed sense of purpose. Years passed, and Olivia's foundation grew, touching lives across the country. She became known not for her past mistakes, but for her resilience, compassion, and the light she brought into others' lives. Her journey of self-forgiveness had been long and difficult, but through it, she had discovered a truth she now shared with others. Forgiveness is not an end, but a bridge, a way to move from pain to purpose, and from regret to redemption. And as she stood before the young women she mentored, wearing Emily's blue pendant, Olivia felt whole once more, having transformed her shadows into guiding light.